All right, welcome everyone to this July regular meeting. Barb, would you call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Beveridge?
Here.
Mr. Boyd?
Here.
Mr. Connell?
Here.
Mr. Kuhn?
Here.
Mrs. Steele?
Here.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Here.
Dr. Yurkovich?
Here.
All right, would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We will move on to item 1.03, which is the election of the board president, which we do every year in July. I am gonna go ahead and take a little different approach. I'm actually going to make the nomination, which is in tradition with what we have done as a district, and nominate Vice President Brad Boyd. Brad's shown tremendous leadership, a level head, and real smarts and passion for this district. So I would like to nominate Brad Boyd.
Second.
I'd like to nominate Robbie Kuhn for board president.
Okay. Any other nominations?
I move to cease nominations.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Steele and a second by Mr. Boyd.
Mr. President, would you be open to some comments as you were able to make for Mr. Boyd? Would you allow me to make some comments on the election or selection?
We need to vote on the motion to cease nominations first.
Yeah, we actually need to vote to cease nominations first.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Boyd?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
All right, I would seek a motion to elect Brad Boyd to serve as the 2023-2024 Board of Education President.
Mr. Wycliffe, I'd hate to interrupt, but I did ask if it would be possible to make some comments before the vote.
Yeah, and I would be happy to allow you some time before the vote, but we'll go through this process first.
Okay.
So I'd seek a nomination, or seek a
We already have two
Motion.
nominated.
motion.
I think we already have two nominated, and we've already made the motion and seconded it and
No,
voted to remove
We've
nomination.
voted to cease nominations.
Correct.
And you will get, I'm happy to give you a time to get comments.
We all look a little confused of where
After-
we are. I'm just asking.
We have ceased nominations, and so now I'm seeking a motion to elect Mr. Boyd to serve as the 23-24 Board of Education President. And then, before we have a vote, I'm happy to give any individuals time to comment.
I believe we also have a motion for a second nominee for president, so we have two of those. So I think that comments would probably come better before you make a motion to select a president when we already have two presidential nominees. Just point of order.
Fair. Yep. If any board members have comments, I'm fine to hear those now.
Okay. I'd like to go first if I could. So, as the board selects its president and vice president for the coming year, it is my fondest wishes that the newly selected persons make a conscious choice to be more open, to communicate better and more often within the board, across the district, and within the community we all serve. Board members are elected to represent the community, to be their voice, to be their eyes and ears, and to act accordingly. To do this, we must be curious. We must ask questions, engage more deeply, and expand our knowledge of the district, how it works, and how it should work for the success of every student, every family, every teacher, every staff member. And with that, I wish whoever is president or vice president the very best.
Thank you. Others? Seeing none, I would seek a motion.
I move to elect Brad Boyd to serve as the 23-24 Board of Education President.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Steele, a second by Mr. Beveridge. Because we have a second nomination up, Mrs. Bean will call for the election, and you'll just state the name of the person who you wish to elect.
Mr. Connell,
Robbie Kuhn, please.
Mr. Kuhn,
Robert Kuhn.
Mrs. Steele,
Brad Boyd.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Brad Boyd?
Dr. Yurkovich,
Brad Boyd.
Mr. Beveridge,
Brad Boyd.
Mr. Boyd,
Brad Boyd.
All right. Motion carries 5-2. Congratulations, Mr. Boyd. If you don't mind, I would like to just take 1 minute to just say what an honor it's been to serve in this capacity. You know, this has been my third term as president. Have done twice as vice president, and obviously will continue to be on the board, but just working in a leadership position with this board, this staff, and past staffs has been one of the honors of my life, and I just really appreciate it. So with that, I don't have to run the meeting anymore. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right,
But does
moving
he
up.
get your seat?
Not tonight.
No, okay.
Not tonight. We'll do that. We'll do that next
All right.
time.
We'll let him hang out for a little bit.
Like as much as I
One
want
last
to be
night.
off this seat.
All right. Moving on to 1.04, election of the 2023-2024 Board Vice President. Depending on how many nominations we have will determine how the vote happens. So, are there any motions for nominations?
I nominate Robbie Kuhn as Vice President of the Board. He's been on the board for 2 full years and earned the right to move into a leadership position.
I nominate Julie Steele for Vice President.
Any other nominations? Any other nominations?
I motion that we cease nominations.
Second?
We have a motion by Mr. Connell and a second by Mr. Wycliffe to cease nominations. Bart?
Mr. Connell,
Robert Kuhn?
No, we're ceasing nominations.
Oh, yes, please. I vote yes to cease nominations.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn.
Yes.
The motion carries 7-0. All right, Mr. Connell, are you wishing to make any comments about your nomination?
Yeah, actually, I think both Julie and Robert have both been on the board here now. We'll be approaching 2 years, now in a year and a half. I think they're both eminently qualified. They've both been well organized and structured. I think they would make both good vice presidents. But I do nominate Robert Kuhn for that position at this time.
Any other comments by the other board members?
I would agree with Mr. Connell's comments in regards to Ms. Steele being qualified. I also believe she's shown leadership in her tenure on the board since she's been elected. I believe she's qualified to work with the superintendent and with the board president, and also has positive relationships with the senior leadership team.
Are there any other comments? All right, we have 2 nominations for vice president for the 2023-2024 position. Ms. Beam will call the board member's name and they will state the person they are wishing to serve in that capacity.
Mrs. Steele,
Julie Steele.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Julie Steele?
Dr. Yurkovich,
Julie Steele.
Mr. Beveridge,
Julie Steele.
Mr. Boyd,
Julie Steele.
Mr. Connell,
Mr. Kuhn?
Mr. Kuhn,
Robert Kuhn.
With a 5-2 vote, Julie Steele has been elected vice president 2023-2024 school year. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I get to pass you the card.
Okay, great.
All right, moving on to agenda item 1.05, appointment for the 2023-2024 board clerk, board deputy clerk, and the treasurer. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'd move to appoint Barb Beam, clerk, Heather Choate, deputy clerk, Cassie Osborne, treasurer of the Board of Education for 2023-2024.
I second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Wycliffe and a second by Dr. Yurkovich.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Moving to 1.06, the appointment of the board attorney for the 2023-2024 school year. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt 1.06 as presented.
Second?
Have a motion by Mr. Beveridge and a second by Mr. Wycliffe.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0. All right, moving on to agenda item 2.01, the adoption of the agenda. I again would seek a motion.
Mr. President, before
Yes,
we
sir.
vote on the agenda, the current, accept the agenda as it is, I have an item I'd like to add to the agenda.
So I can't remember the date or the time we made this.
I second the motion to adjust the agenda.
You did make it.
Written board policy allows the board to adjust the
okay.
agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
We did make it. So we kind of have this arrangement with this agreement that we wouldn't do this. Okay. So, Mr. Connell, I don't know if you remember, but I'm sorry, Mr. Kuhn. We did have an agreement that we would give board members ample time before we added items to the agenda. However, I will allow you to make adjustments for tonight's meeting. I would just ask that moving forward, we agree to the time, I think it was 72 hours, for the adoption or adding items to the agenda. So,
Okay.
what's your addition?
I'd like to make a motion to add the BOE Resolution 2 as action item, or excuse me, Resolution 1 as action item 8.04. Other action item, yeah. You want me to read it?
8.05.
8.05?
There's a kids can see these.
Yeah, 8.05, excuse me.
So you have a resolution that you're wanting to add to the agenda
Yes,
under action item other?
yes,
Do you have a copy of the resolution?
I do. Would you like to see it?
Sure.
I second the motion to add 8.05 as an action item other. And would like it like him to read it into the record.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Kuhn and a second by Mr. Connell to add this resolution as 8.05 under action other. Mr. Kuhn, can you please read your resolution?
Yes, and that copy's for Barb,
Sure.
when she's done.
Thank
So
you.
you have a copy of it.
Thank you.
Resolution USD number 233, Board of Education, 7/13/2023. Whereas the district staff, at the direction of the Board of Education, overstepped their authority to enforce security measures against Board Member Brian Connell and without due process violated his constitutional rights. Whereas the Board of Education has held different standards for board members' behavior, and the board chose to censure Board Member Connell when others have exhibited the same behavior. In an attempt to avoid future litigation and to allow our newly appointed board president and vice president to move forward with a positive and cohesive board, I move to remove any and all security measures taken against citizen Brian Connell effective immediately, and to immediately revoke the censure actions under which 5 members placed Member Connell on May 16th, 2023.
All right. So we have a second, so we have a motion on the table. This motion is to add this item to the agenda. Barb, you want to call the roll, please?
Mr. Boyd,
No.
Mr. Beveridge,
No.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich,
No.
Mrs. Steele,
No.
Mr. Wycliffe,
No.
The motion fails 5-2. Moving back to 2.01, we still need to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion on the table?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Beveridge and a second by Mr. Connell.
Mr. Wycliffe.
Sorry, Mr. Wycliffe.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Do we have recognition and awards tonight? All right. Moving to 4.01, the budget process overview.
Good evening. I just wanted to take a few moments and start and walk us through the budget process. There's a lot more moving parts these days, so I just wanted to, I know we gave a quick next steps as we did the year-end transactions, but I wanted to walk you through the coming months and what to expect as a board. On July 20th or before, we need to notify the county clerk of Johnson County of our intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate. This doesn't require board approval, but it does require us to inform the board. The way this works is last week, the Department of Ed opened up the budget spreadsheets. We're quickly trying to load everything in, prior year numbers, and the maximum budget we could have. We would set the revenue neutral rates at the highest possible mark, because the board can always lower them as we go through the budget process. They cannot increase them. So, for example, a capital outlay at its maximum legal of 8 mils. Some of the other ones that we have flexibility with, we will set, for example, special assessment that does our benefit districts. We would set that where it needs to be and move it up just very slightly in case there's an error in the budgeting process. But that in no way is the final mark for the levies. Then at the August 3rd meeting, we'll have a draft of the budget. And that's, at that meeting, you're going to set the budget hearing date, and you'll set the hearing for the revenue neutral rate. They can both occur on the same night, but we do have to have 2 different hearings, basically regarding the budget. On August 20th, we'll publish those notice of hearings in the Kansas City Star, assuming the board takes action tonight to name them as our official newspaper. It has to be posted for 10 days before the hearing. The hearing for the revenue neutral rate can't be before August 20th, and it can't be after September 20th. So we've basically established it at our September 7th board meeting. We would conduct both hearings, the budget hearing and a hearing to consider exceeding that revenue neutral rate. Another part of our budget process now is the building needs assessments and the state assessment review. Both of these are posted on our website right now, and I would encourage the board to review those as you go through the coming months on the budget process. And we'll be indicating how we're building components into the budget to help address what our buildings have flagged as their needs. At that same meeting, you would adopt the budget for the 23-24 school year. On September 20th, or by then, we have to certify that with the county clerk, and we automatically do the same with the Kansas Department of Education, although that timeline is really October 1st. Just for information purposes, those of you that remember an old process where we were done in August, that would be true if we didn't exceed revenue neutral rates. You also don't have to inform the county if the only thing triggered was the 20 mil general fund levy that runs across the state. The purpose of that revenue neutral rate and the longer timeline now is really to inform the county of our intent so that they can create letters, all the taxing jurisdictions submit, they create letters for all the taxpayers that show the impact of that prior to the hearings. So I just wanted to let you know, some things require action, some don't, and that'll be how we'll proceed through the coming months.
John, can you remind us who's impacted by the revenue neutral rate notification in terms of other jurisdictions?
It would be all of the taxing jurisdictions, the city, county, library districts, park districts, anybody that levies a tax.
A quick question for you.
Certainly.
You mentioned that we do it every year, right? Just in case. Has there been a point in time, any time in the last 5 to 7 years, in where that just in case was needed or necessary, where we?
No, we've had many instances where we've lowered levies below what we had proposed because we realized, we have too much of a buffer in there. We could lower that down, or we always monitor the bond and interest very closely. If you have a little stronger interest earnings in the next couple months, maybe it goes down a fraction. So we've made some conscious movement. Never an error caused us to have to utilize that buffer that we put in there.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was asking because sometimes the rates, as you've mentioned, helped us in the last year.
Sure.
When rates were moving in all over the place, that buffer is a necessity of safety, not to be spent, right? And that's where you've guided us over the last year. I just want to make sure I said that, reiterated what you've been teaching us.
And with the 2 large levies, if we over levy, it just reduces the amount you have to levy the next year. You'll see that as we go through the budget. In the year-end balances, you saw balances in the in the supplement LOB and general fund. Those just roll down. If we determine we need X, you got to minus what's sitting in the bank right now and lower the levy going forward.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Can I ask one couple questions here? So we have to publish in the Star a newspaper record for 10 days. Is that a state law?
It's a state law, and actually, think of it as kind of a ring that gets larger. We don't have a local newspaper with large enough circulation anymore. We used to default to the Olathe News. It was a section in the Kansas City Star. Now it's gone, so it's now the Kansas City Star is our only avenue that we can utilize. But it's a state statute that you have to name an official newspaper, and all postings must be put into that newspaper.
Do you have any estimate on how much that costs?
The Star is a little more expensive. I'm trying to remember. You have to run it as an ad. It's almost like $600, depending on how big, around $600 versus, it used to be like $200 for smaller newspapers.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
John, would you share real quick, just with the board, if we have community members that have questions during the budgeting process, where they may go to get additional information on what that might look like, please?
Thank you. I had that in a note, and I didn't look at my paperwork. I was trying to be good. Actually, when we bring the, in August, when you pass the notice of hearings, we will post that draft budget on our website. And so there'll be about a 30-day window where the public could review it, ask any questions. We'll have contact information if they have questions about the budget itself.
John, I just want to make a comment. I know in some of the other districts, I have used what you have done to help them illustrate the amazing detail, the subnotes. When people review our budgets, if they go to our website, it's so much more detailed and so much more annotated than many of our neighboring school districts that I wanted to say that because when other people are like, well, we don't have anything like that. I was like, look what John does. So I just want to make sure I acknowledge that level of detail and the level of annotation, because other districts are learning, wow, if they are having that much detail, we should too. And I over the last few weeks, others were looking and asking, and I said, look at what John does. So I wanted to make sure I said that, because that's really important. It was empowering for me to be able to take our materials, and they're like, oh, we don't have that, and we don't see that, we don't have that, how come we don't have that? And I thought that was really, really good, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. I should take the compliment and shut up, but I want to clarify that wonderful lengthy document won't be available. It's never available till a couple months after the adoption, but it is a good
Right, I mean, it's out there
instructional
now for
tool.
what we did
But I
last
didn't
year.
want the expectation that
Oh,
that would
yeah.
be there.
Yeah, after it's approved. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Dr. McMullen, in my haste to get through the agenda, I overlooked your contribution to our meeting, sir.
Taking a play.
Mr. Boyd worked that well. I've always dreamed of being at this podium. So, well, thank you for attending tonight's Olathe Public Schools Board of Education meeting. Before we move further with the agenda, we feel it's important to review having a productive and orderly meeting. This meeting is designated for the board to work with the superintendent and staff to conduct the work as outlined in the agenda. Please understand that patrons attending the meeting do so solely in an observatory role. Out of respect for everyone in attendance, we request that audience members not speak, yell, or give applause during the meeting. This ensures the board, staff, and other attendees are able to listen and understand the business conducted. Anyone disrupting the meeting in any capacity will be asked to leave and may lose the opportunity to attend future meetings. Thank you again for attending, and we'll proceed with the agenda.
Thank you, and my apologies, sir.
The Board of Education reserves a little limited time during its regular meetings for individuals to address the board. Individuals addressing the board should come to the podium at the front of the room when requested by the board president. When beginning your address to the board, we ask that you please share your name, the city where you live, and what schools your children attend or have attended in the district, if applicable. Tonight, we request that individual speakers limit their comments to 3 minutes. A staff person will monitor the time and notify the speaker when the 3-minute time limit has expired. Please direct your comments to the entire board. If a response is appropriate, the president will respond or refer to another individual. We ask that speakers refrain from discussing complaints involving individual staff members or students if they have not been previously addressed to the district's administration. Out of respect for everyone in attendance, yelling, foul language, props, visuals, and addressing the audience are not permitted. In addition, audience members are not allowed to speak, yell, or give applause during public comments. This ensures the board is able to listen and then transition to the next speaker. Please note that those who disrupt the meeting in any capacity will be asked to leave and may lose the opportunity to attend future meetings.
Thank you. If I mispronounce someone's name, please correct me once you get to the microphone. I got an easy one to start off with, though. Kat Thompson.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I can't name all the schools my kid has been at, so I'm just going to start where we're starting. July is Disability Pride Month, and I would like to share our experience with the district regarding our daughter's disability, autism. I have been sharing our struggles with anyone who will listen from the time our daughter entered kindergarten. She is going into 8th grade this fall. We have been dismissed, patronized, and misunderstood. Our voice is not heard. Our concerns have not been valid. It's clear to me why the Kansas IDA State Performance Plan public report for 2021 shows parental involvement below target goal. We have asked for supports that would help our daughter access the general classroom, only to be told that's not how we do things. And I can't tell you how many times in discussions with administrators we have heard the Olathe way. The Olathe way has broken my daughter, and it's broken my family. It intentionally avoids identifying autism, and it labels these kids as behavior kids. And what's worse, it encourages their peers to view them as behavior children. It doesn't empower a neurodiverse person to embrace their fullness and beauty and wonder. When we miss early identification and early interventions, the only thing left to focus on is behavior. Then we view that student as someone who won't, not someone who can't. That causes the student shame, and it causes their sole identity to be shame. So when you have a person that is, their identity is shame and impacts their mental health, it shows itself in many ways in aggressive and destructive behaviors, in school refusal and avoidance, in difficulty following classroom rules, and in making friends. Shame in many cases leads to suicidal ideation, hospitalizations, vaping, drug experimentation, and alcohol use. It leads to therapeutic school replacements, intensive outpatient therapy centers, and residential placements. How do I know this? Because that's our story, and that's where we're at now. It's not the teachers and it's not the staff who's not willing to acknowledge the need for intervention. It's the systems and the Olathe districts that's creating the barriers. The systems that are in place, they hinder teachers and staff's ability to perform child find. System and barriers tell teachers and students that they have to have an academic goal to qualify for an IEP. They make the child fail a core subject in order for an evaluation. System and barriers fail to educate our administration and our teachers what autism is. Thank you.
Thank you. Kaylin Campaign.
Hello, I'm Kaylin Campaign. I live in Olathe and my son goes to Heatherstone. I'm a mom who is also a speech language pathologist. As a therapist myself, it is mentally draining to advocate basic needs for my autistic son when I know they do not have the staff to support his plan. My son was a part of the specialized autism preschool that is no longer funded by the district. I was told they stopped funding because they didn't want parents to expect those supports in later years. His kindergarten team informed me that autism was not a reason for him to have an IEP. He needed to have behaviors to support a specialized plan. They removed his autism diagnosis without my consent. They suggested the general ed program with a 15-minute check-in from the resource teacher once a week. In one conversation, my son lost his visual support and his sensory breaks. He survived kindergarten. Every year I write emails to his staff because they're always new and they don't know he has a disability. They see him as a neurotypical peer. His teacher mentioned behaviors increased in specials. She was concerned he didn't play with peers at recess anymore. His anxieties continued to worsen and behaviors trickled in. He had Teacher of the Year, doing her best to provide him with one-on-one support when she had the capacity. She warned me he would need a behavioral chart with next year's teacher. I knew it was not her job to navigate his needs on her own. I did my best to reach out for outside support. I reached out to the speech therapist for social stories, and she told me some kids prefer to be alone. She suggested to work on his R's instead. She did not look at my son through the autism lens. His next IEP meeting, they wanted to move to a 504. I refused because he still wets himself in front of his peers. Aiden has been told he chooses to have bad days. When his teacher asked what a good day was, he said to be quiet. He was taught his struggles were better untold because there were not enough paras to meet his need. Since this conversation, I've had 3 phone calls with administrative staff that my son was eloping, showing behaviors that they did not know how to de-escalate. They asked me for help because they were with him for 2 hours or more. I asked them to reach out to the autism coordinator. She was in a different building that day. I asked for the resource teacher. She was absent. They did not know how to support my son because what his staff does is not written out in his IEP plan. My son no longer wants to go to school, and he's only 7 years old. My behavior kid has autism and now new traumas, and that is diminished in his IEP because his diagnosis has been ignored. Please empower staff to acknowledge autism on IEPs so it is safe for him to be neurodivergent and no longer seen as the behavior kid that's disrespecting peers and teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Schmidt.
Hello, my name is Kathy Schmidt, and my kids attended Black Bob. I was a teacher at Westview for a few years, and now I have grandchildren at, oh jeepers, I just forgot. Heather? No, oh shoot, I forgot. I signed up to talk about our children's futures, but before that, let me thank you for taking your time. I know you're not paid to do this, so you take your time, and I just want to thank you for that. I love kids. I think they're awesome. Anybody that knows me know I do. But I have some concerns, and I ran across a story which really explains how I feel. Corrie ten Boom, we all know who she was a young girl sitting next to her father on a train ride. She asked her father what a word meant that she heard at school. It had to do with sex. To her surprise, he just turned and looked at her. He didn't say anything. Finally, he stood up, lifted his traveling case to the floor, and asked if Corrie would carry it off the train. She tugged and tugged and tugged at it, but it was crammed with watches and spare parts he had purchased that morning. "It's too heavy," she said. Yes, and it would be a pretty poor father who would ask his little girl to carry such a load. It is the same way with knowledge, Corrie. Some knowledge is just too heavy for children. When you're older and stronger, you can bear it. But for now, you must trust me to carry it for you. That's how I feel. Our kids are young and innocent for such a short time, and we must do all we can to protect them and their innocence. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Johan.
Hi, good evening. My name's Becky Johan. I live in Lenexa. I had everything planned, but I brought my little guy and he has my notes. So this is the old phone and it doesn't have anything on it, so I have it here. Anyway, I know that's taking my time. Thank you again for your time this evening. I wanted to come talk to you. You may recognize me. I was here last summer about the same time, about the same issue. The bus stop has been removed in my neighborhood yet again. There are 23 kids in my neighborhood that this impacts. I live in Stoneview. My kids go to Manchester Park. My son is 5. He'll be in kindergarten this fall. My daughter's going to be in 4th grade. She's almost 9. And the expectation for me is that my kids get to school safe. I want them to have a safe way to be at school. I work in healthcare. I'm a nurse at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I take care of our nation's heroes every single day. And I think safety is first there, so safety should be first everywhere. We do everything that we can to make sure that we have no errors in healthcare. I want to make sure that there are no errors for my kids when they go to school. A few reasons why I think it's really instrumental to have a school bus in our neighborhood. The neighborhood that I live on intersects with Lone Elm and 101st. Lone Elm, my kids would have to cross that street, is 45 miles per hour. There's no stop sign. There's no crosswalk. There's a lot of traffic there actually during that time because a lot of people are entering Manchester Park neighborhood to take their kids to school. In addition, I don't know if you knew, but Manchester Park is expanding and has a new construction subdivision there as well. Lots of traffic, lots of unfamiliar vehicles, lots of unfamiliar people. Lots of things to cause me anxiety while I'm at work taking care of patients, making sure hopefully that my kids make it to school okay with whoever neighbor that I think may be taking them, or if they have to walk, potentially being home alone. Those things really worry me. My son is pretty independent, but I don't know that I can trust him yet to walk that distance. My daughter, I hope, would help along with that, but I really hope that we can solve this situation. I'm here again. You guys had a plan to change the times for school. I really think that would be an agreeable plan. I know, as well as you know, that people are not coming to work for these jobs. Healthcare is suffering. The school district is suffering. You got to find people or you got to find another solution. I don't want to be here next summer talking about the same thing. So if you change the times, that can at least make a situation a little bit more bearable for me. JCPRD, by the way, before and after care, I forgot this, is full. It's waitlisted. Do you know I was on the first day that it opened, like a Taylor Swift concert, in the queue waiting to get in, and I was waitlisted. I wanted to just say thank you for your time. I appreciate that. I don't have all my act together, but I tried the best I could. So thank you again, and I hope that you consider at least giving my bus back. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Briggs.
Good afternoon, Board of Education. My name is Megan Bricks, and I'm again here as an elementary general music teacher in this district. I want to thank you for allowing me to continually speak each month to raise my voice into what I think is important within the school district. Tonight I'm here to talk about something that's extremely important to me in my heart. The goals for the 23-24 school year for you as our Board of Education, who makes decisions that affect educators and students in the school district, including me. My goal for you all is to do and put students first and staff members first. We need you to show up, but not just show up and be there. We need you to be there for us and be an active role in whatever is happening. We need you to be there experiencing our daily life within a school building alongside us to truly understand each and every situation and not just a building walkthrough. My hope is that you as the Board of Education will focus on uniting with one another to be a complete Board of Education instead of being separated. Our students and our educators here in this district need us to stand united. When our students see us united in our fight for the best possible public education for our students to be prepared for their futures, they will be more likely to invest themselves into their own personal educational journey. We want our students to know that it is okay to have differing opinions than those you may work with. They might have to be in a small group with students who share different ideas with them, and that's okay. But you must be willing to be respectful to everyone, no matter their opinions or beliefs. Everyone is warranted their own opinions, and we must respect that and show that to our students. Our students are watching. One of mine is here today watching me right here, and we must always act in respectful manners to those around us. I truly, truly hope from the bottom of my heart that with the start of the school year, the students and staff will see our school district united in their efforts to support public education. Thank you again for letting me speak tonight. I look forward to a wonderful start to the school year in just a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Head.
My name is Grayson, and I will be starting 6th grade at Summit Trail in the fall. I am here to talk about how the change in busing affects students' health, safety, as well as their parents. First off, due to the construction on 119th Street, the suggested route would be through unknown neighborhoods, which could be confusing in an emergency. During winter, it becomes lighter later and darker earlier, which means students might have to walk in the dark and cold. Also, if it was snowing, students would have to wear snow boots, which could take up a lot of space in their lockers. Regarding the students' health, we would have to wake up a lot earlier. I'm assuming maybe 6 a.m. And what if we had a math test? We would be super tired and wouldn't be able to function well. We might even fall asleep in class. And no parent wants to get a call from the school saying their student fell asleep in class. Plus, we might have a ton of stuff to carry, so it would really hurt our backs and shoulders. I can personally speak from experience because I had to carry a trombone last year as well as a backpack. And that was only a fraction of the way to school, and it really hurt my shoulders. Finally, the busing change really impacts our parents negatively. There will be a very long pickup/drop-off line that would take a lot of time. I'm assuming it would take 30 minutes to an hour, so would you like to be waiting that long in the car? Also, many parents go to the office, so they might not be able to pick up their kids to and from school. That means their kids might not get home till 4:40 in the afternoon. This is why we need the buses back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Carrie Van Buskirk.
That's a hard act to follow. Good evening, esteemed board members. Carrie Van Buskirk, Olathe South parent, advocate, and registered Democrat with no affiliation with Moms for Liberty. DEI and SEL are vital to meaningful inclusion of disabled students. Please ensure disability is part of that programming and conversation. A mother's desire for her autistic child to be seen, understood, valued, and meaningfully educated is not political nor radical. It is simply human. Since you will be voting on changes to the Student Code of Conduct this evening, I felt it relevant to dive into the special services study attained through my core request last month. Students with disabilities were suspended at a rate 2.2 times that of their non-disabled peers. Dr. Linda Aldridge, who conducted the study, cautions, the power of teacher expectations augmented by formal and informal labels impacts student conduct and learning. In terms of both behavior and academics, students tend to live up or down to adult expectations, and these words matter a lot. And yet there is a significant finding needing thorough examination and careful consideration. 33 of staff participants referenced behavior kids as a reason why other students with disabilities do not get services. This language is exclusive in nature versus inclusive. She also reminds us that language patterns are reflections of deep cultural beliefs. Admittedly, I was incredibly upset when I initially read this finding, but then I actually started thinking of how this is a systemic failure and not at all a teacher failure. Are we possibly characterizing neurodivergent students as behavior kids? Do staff have autism training? If we fail to acknowledge autism in our student population, we may inadvertently label them and characterize them as a behavior kid. Out of 16% of our students identified with disabilities, only 1.4%, or 65 of our total student population of 29,043 students are identified as autistic. Only 65. That's considerably low, considering the United States Department of Education reported the national average as 11% in 2019. So as you're considering some of these code of conduct changes, I ask that you scrutinize this study. How many manifestations determination hearings are founded? Also ask how many of these suspended students have a medical diagnosis of autism, but we are currently serving them under a different eligibility. Is the student's placement appropriate? 24% of the special education teachers reported being assaulted. 37 participants indicate recommendations of placement and services are influenced by perceived staff ability and funding. Many teachers and administrators verbalize concerns about noncompliance with IEPs. Please be mindful that a student's IEP team has sole authority to determine, among other things, placement. Lawfully, these decisions are to be made without regard to funding or staffing issues.
Thank you. Ty Van Buskirk.
Good evening, board members. Thanks for letting me make some comments, especially since July is Disability Pride Month and the ADA was passed 32 years ago this July. I'm Stephen Buskirk, a Olathe South graduate, son of Carrie Van Buskirk, have autism, and moved here 10 years ago with an autism eligibility. You know, that's the first time I've ever said that publicly. You have no idea how many years I've had to mask that fact while I've been a student in the district. You know how hard it is to appear neurotypical while trying your best to internalize aspects of your disability? The nerve of accidentally slipping up, believe me, it takes a lot out of you. And ultimately, it's hard making connections with peers on account of never really presenting who you really are. Many of you have already heard a bit of my story thanks to my mom. You heard some things from her perspective, and I feel it's important to share my perspective and why it's taken me this long to speak about my experiences. Maybe I wouldn't have needed to mask if it weren't for students with disabilities being labeled as less than by other peers and being continuously harassed. I myself experienced this, which led to me experiencing suicidal ideation in 6th grade, becoming traumatized, and starting to receive therapy. For instance, throughout the entirety of my years in middle school, as well as during the first semester in high school, I was being harassed and even given death threats by a student who had somehow found out I had autism. I did try to tell staff what's happening, but it only seemed to make the problem worse. In another instance, I witnessed a student with autism being bullied nearly every single day, constantly being humiliated and manipulated by peers as a twisted form of entertainment. That student was left completely unaware, and though many other students and I tried to say something about it to administrative staff, we were told that they would, and I quote, take care of it, and that if we were to tell him he was being bullied, we'd be suspended. What kind of sense does that make? What on earth is staff being told to do in these kind of situations, to the point of telling students not to stand up for their peers? Even worse, parents not being notified if this is happening, or the student being able to tell their parents themselves. Throughout high school, my IEP was never followed. My freshman year, I was thrown into some MTSS program for math. Although my math scores were superior to most general ed students, that's just blatant discrimination to assume anyone in a resource needs intervention in math. In all my years of high school, resource was never individualized, and nobody was able to give any real support as they didn't have access to the general ed curriculum. Resource was always just a glorified study hall to me, and I was almost never able to use that time for really anything beyond that. In addition, my general ed teachers most of the time were never informed I had an IEP and wouldn't know till either after a full semester or quarter. That isn't to say my general ed teachers weren't terrific educators. It's just that they were never experienced or had prior knowledge in terms of supporting students with IEPs or having certain needs. You have amazing staff. They just don't have the training or the time for planning. This is made even more apparent in your special services study, which confirms that this is not a staffing issue, but a systemic issue that's leading staff to fail. Thankfully, my mother, who's quite an expert in terms of supporting and advocating for those with special needs, essentially took the role of accommodating my education in order for my needs to be met. She was basically my case manager for all my years of high school and made sure I got FAPE. And while I am grateful I had an expert on my side, many, if not most, parents of special needs students aren't able to provide FAPE themselves. That shouldn't be a responsibility of the parents in the first place. The P in FAPE stands for public, not parent-provided. Ultimately, special ed never seemed to be inclusive, made even more apparent by both general ed and special ed not really communicating with one another, especially since at South, all special ed classrooms are all in the same hall, all isolated from general ed in that building. Keep in mind, I didn't need one-on-one instruction like many other students with disabilities. All I needed was staff to understand my disability and to be able to coordinate with the general ed curriculum. Please ensure all staff members undergo autism training in the near future. It's important that neurodiverse students are educated in an environment where they are seen, understood, and valued. Unfortunately, I never had that experience, and honestly, I never felt safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our action consent items. I know there's some questions about 6.15. Does any board member wish to pull out any other items?
Yes, sir. I'd like to suggest that we pull out and have a separate discussion on 6.15. Did you say, I thought you said 6.5.
No, 1.5.
6.15. Thank you.
Yep. Any others? All right. So if we can take 6.15 first and then address all of them collectively, that's how I like to proceed.
Mr. President, I would like to actually separate those out so that we could have a distinct and separate vote on 6.15 separate from the rest of the action items, if that would be possible.
That's fine. Yep. So, Mr. Connell, if you have questions on 6.15, you can go ahead and.
Would you like me to start?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So, a lot of pieces and parts to cover here, but it says revisions to the Code of Student Conduct. And I'll start with, I will not be voting to approve it as it stands, and I'll share a reason why and what I'm concerned about. So I'm going to start with the fact that, first, I want to be on record as saying that I 100% agree one of the recommendations from the Diversity and Education Engagement Advisory Council Equity Audit recommendations. In particular, their number one recommendation was to amplify student voice and increase student access and opportunities. It is my understanding in asking questions and inquiring that at no time was the student code of conduct engaging actual students in the process of understanding, reviewing, and having input. And for that sole reason, I think that this is a rush to move to changes that leave out the entire population of 29,000 students in which it's supposed to be representing. With that said, I also have some concerns of some of the particular edits that were included in it, including Class 2 offenses. We added the language offensive language. The bullet point now would read verbal abuse, offensive language, or threat. Merriam-Webster defines the word offensive language as vulgar or bad language or profanity. So we know, anybody that's been in a school knows that we are hearing profanity, offensive language, and bad language in the hallways, in the classrooms, on the football fields, in the dugouts. So my question is, okay, who's gonna pass out the punishments? Who's gonna hold everybody accountable, right? We now add that very common element. Who's shepherding things? My second comment is that we have policy. And I'm not saying all of this that there aren't some good edits in here. What I'm saying is that we have a process in which we're failing to do a couple things. One is consistent and regular enforcement. So I'm still looking for, which Dr. Yurgovich asked for in the last board meeting, statistical information disaggregated by our schools, our grades, our races. And so I'd like to see that so that we could more fully understand the implications of if we went to a no tolerance model. Because if we were to actually enforce these policies, especially some of the ones that have been escalated, which I'm going to pull out in a second, we could end up with so many more kids in trouble than we have. Second thing is that I have some questions around. We had a bullying policy that is part of a level 2 offense, and we added the word "and hazing." I understand some of that is statutory, so I get that. But in reading the bullet point, bullying and hazing, under KSA 726147, some of the language is duplicative, repeats itself in the harassment policy. And in our particular, you all are proposing, the district is proposing that the harassment policy that is currently a level 2, class 2 offense is stricken entirely from the class 2 offenses and escalated to a class 3 offense. So one of the questions I'd like to ask is, if someone in the district, please help us articulate and understand why and what happened. Help us understand why harassment that currently says any comments, jokes, slurs, spitting, touching, or teasing, or harassing, or intimidating nature of a student's actual or perceived race, color, et cetera, is moving to level 3. Would someone please open up and address why that is?
Would you like us to answer that part now?
Yeah, see, we can go there first.
Okay.
Because that's a huge element of that.
Sure. Mr. Pittman led our committee that worked on this, so I'll let him answer first and then add anything else.
Yeah, good evening. Mr. Connell, I think as to the harassment, I guess question first, I think there are a couple points on that. You know, we had our committee first meet in April, and that was a committee of administrators, myself, Brent Kiger, Matt Johnson, and a few others. And one of the points of emphasis there was the harassment offense. As the board knows, our offense, the code has 4 classifications, 1 to 4, 1 being least, 4 most. And at that point, harassment was a class 2, although it had language in there, I believe that significant offenses could be raised to a class 3. And in discussing that with our administrators, we felt like that harassment justified an potentially increased classification to class 3. And I just want to point out also that as you look at the potential discipline for each class, there is a wide range of discipline for the conduct. Under federal law, our administrators' hands are tied whenever there's a weapon in school. That is mandatory a year for a student to be out of school. Other than that, there is the code is made to provide guidance to our administrators and to our parents and our students, and also to give them flexibility to work with the students and to find discipline that fits the circumstance. And so that's the way the code has been set up.
And while you're there, would it be able is it okay, Mr. President, if I engage and ask questions along the way since he's already there? Would that be okay?
Sure, go ahead.
So,
but Mr., I would just add that I'm sure there's other board members who have questions on this topic. So if we can be mindful and be considerate of time and allow other folks to make comments, but continue.
Good. This is our first opportunity as a board to have a public dialogue and a group dialogue, and I think I might actually cover things others have, so I appreciate that. I would first I'd call out that I appreciate that you moved language up in the policy early. There was a particular section that reads, each principal has the authority to use discretion, common sense in enforcing the code of conduct. So to what you just described is, yes, they have a whole plethora of options available to them within the different categories, right?
Right.
I have a little bit of concern when it says the principal is authorized to apply a higher level of consequence for serious violations of the code, even if it's a student's first offense. So the guidance goes from, hey, you have a lot of flexibility of how you can address this and what you can do, to now it's encouraged that they escalate to a higher level of punishment more quickly, even if it's a first offense. Can you help me understand, now that language may have been in the system. I know we had a vote last summer, similar language. What brought about the encouragement to go to more extreme punishments even for first offenders, rather than allowing them to use their best judgment?
Mr. Pittman, before you answer that, I just want to be clear. The language isn't saying that the principals are encouraged. It says principals are authorized. So it's the conduct isn't encouraging principals to go to a higher level. It says they are authorized to do that. I think there's a distinction between authorize and encourage.
Good call out on the word authorized.
Yeah,
but it does call out an itemization of the more extreme punishment versus really truly letting it sit in their lap with what's right. So,
and Mr. Pittman, can I just confirm also that that statement has been in the code of conduct, and it continues to be placed at each class, but it was added to the kind of the front page, if you will. So the language has been there.
Correct. Yeah, it was under
addition.
each offense, and the committee, as we met, we put it right up to the front. So that way, at least in my mind, a thought there was to the committee that it brought attention to it. It was bold in there. folks could see that, or administrators could see that. As to, again, I don't think encourage would be the right word there. I think, administrators aren't judges, they aren't lawyers, they're educators. And so you want them to understand that while the code provides a framework, it also isn't necessarily static, it isn't rigid. It's rigid for one offense, and that's class 4. If there's a weapon in school, there's no if ands or buts there, except for an appeal to our superintendent.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Pittman.
You're welcome, Actually, the Chief Administrative Officer of the district. I could go through examples of the code, and Dr. Yurkovich would have many, and Dr. Yeager and other administrators here, of incidences where maybe a student had done something, maybe a very good student had done something very dumb. And under our code, potentially that offense, or that offense could be a very severe discipline for that code. And on the other hand, we could have students that are in trouble a lot, and how the kind of the code applies to a student who is acting up continuously. No students are alike. They're all doing different things and act in different ways. But I think that language is there in the code again as a reminder for administrators that they do have flexibility, and that they can increase the an offense level, if you will. I also want to point out that, and I work very closely with Dr. McMullen, with Dr. Kiger, or Mr. Kiger. I gave him a new title there. Chief Kiger, Mr. Albers, and now Dr. Waters in particular, mainly middle school and high school. When we have some circumstances that come in, they call us, and we have a better idea and I left out our elementary folks because a lot of times, the more they don't get unfortunately, thankfully not, some of the larger offenses. We have a different perspective on things because we see the entire district. And we know, for example, an incident maybe happens at one high school, received a certain amount of discipline, that happened at another school. Those administrators at this school didn't see what happened here. We have the ability to see the entire system. And that's another reason why when you come up with a code, you want it to be flexible. You want it to also provide guidelines, but not too strict.
And as I shared, I think maybe at the last regular meeting, one of the things that we will do as we meet with our administrators, actually next week, is we will talk with them about the code of conduct and also our expectation around involving assistant superintendents at each level, especially in those level 3 and obviously level 4 concerns. But that really is what we have found over time to be the most effective way, is to be able to process individual situations with principals, certainly taking what they know about a student and the supports a student has already at school and those pieces, but also really working with the principal to give them that guideline. And as a matter of law, any school-based punishment, the appeal is actually at the school. That's the only legal appeal for that. So one of the things that we have to be very careful about is that we're very diligent in making sure our administrators understand the changes and also understand our expectation, as Chris just said, to engage our general administration folks, for that consistency piece, because they do have the lens of what's happening across this entire system.
All right, a couple of other questions for you. In the language for harassment that was moved and added, any comments, jokes, slurs, spitting, touching, or teasing of a harassing or intimidating nature based on students' actual or perceived race, color, national origin, sex, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religion? So that's the written definition of harassment. Is that how that's written? And
I think so.
On page, says page 19, and the bullet point, it's the first sentence following the meta-sized word of harassment. Is that generally how I should read that first sentence? Is the district's definition of harassment?
Well, that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't following you.
No, that's okay. I was just reading it because I just want to understand that that's what it is, and then that's what you're wanting us to read it as, and then it says, this includes association with a person or group with one or more of the aforementioned characteristics, whether actual or perceived. I have concerns around the perception word, the perceived. In whose perception? Is it the person who's offended, or the principal, or the person with assigning the consequences?
It's a good question.
Or
and
the teacher who may have heard or seen?
Yeah, I think it gets to the perception of the individual who was, the student who was doing the conduct. In other words, did I perceive, me, Chris Pitt, perceive that that person over here is gay? And I said something to offend that student, believing that student was gay. That was my perception. It turns out that student was not gay, for example. That's my reading of that. There could be another interpretation of that, but that's the interpretation I have of that.
Okay. As I'm just looking for some clarification to understand, right? Because I think that's one of the points that I made in the last board meeting was that Dr. Yeager, to his credit, said, yes, we absolutely will, that there'll be some guidance and coaching and slide decks and presentations to administrators, to our teachers, to our students, so there's full understanding and capability to grasp their offense. Because we are talking about minors. Folks not capable of voting, folks not capable of buying liquor, folks not capable of buying cigarettes. And let's be honest, not all of them. You know, the American Medical Association says their entire full frontal cortex not fully developed until the age of 23. So we're asking them to be fully formed adults in their thinking and processes with consequences that could be pretty significant in the same category as kidnapping and arson and things like that. So I'm really concerned about that. Right?
I would like to point out too, and you know, as Mr. Pittman said, you know, us having guidelines for our staff, our students, and our community is important, so they know what's expected. That's really important for us as an operational school system. You know, beyond that, though, our default is not to impose consequences as a school system. You know, as we work with our educators, who are amazing people, and our principals, you know, their goal is not to impose a consequence as a first step, and that's why they really work, you know, with families to understand the dynamics of all kids. There are some things that are pretty cut and dry, you know, as Chris said, are level 4 pieces, but you know, at the end of the day, what I worry about is a perception that our goal is to impose consequences on kids, and that's really not our goal, and a lot of that is the reasons you just articulated. We recognize that we have kids who don't have fully developed frontal lobes yet, and they make mistakes, and you know, some mistakes have more severe consequences in terms of, you know, our response than others. But you know, as a default, as a school system, we would much rather teach and practice than impose consequences, and that again is one of the things that we iterate with our staff every year. Our principals iterate that with their staff every year. But as Chris said, we have kids who either make a pretty bad one-time decision or continue to make poor choices, and we have to have the ability to impose consequences or a response to those when we can. But I just want to be clear that our first response is never typically to impose consequences, and if we do, having the ability to really thoughtfully put those in place is really important to us.
Well, that leads me to a question that you just brought up, is consequences. I'm reading Class 3 offenses require notification to law enforcement if there's a determination of potential criminal conduct. And it says Class 3 offenses, high school, in-school suspension, short-term out-of-school suspension, long-term out-of-school suspension, but none of those does it say in-school suspension. It says only in-school suspension at elementary and middle school. My concern is that the default in the printed materials goes straight to suspension of one kind or another. And in none of this does it say that parent-guardian contact will be written until it is required, which is required in level 4. So one of the things I would like, if we can edit this, is that I do believe that, and it says definition of consequences for class 1 through 4, that parent-guardian contact is not included as a requirement until things get pretty daggone severe. And I think we need to be more conscious that the parents are accountable for their children, they are minors, and that they should be guided, encouraged, and contacted immediately. In fact, our current policies do not have any way, shape, or form that a parent must be contacted in any particular time period. And I have brought that up, that I think is no matter what, before this gets approved, that if a parent is contacted, they must be contacted within 30 minutes. Right now, there's no time limit. And I'm fully aware of multiple emails that the board has had and that we've had before the board, and including my own family, in which individuals and people running for office have individuals that have been kept at a middle school or a high school for more than 2 hours without their parental knowledge available, including at one of the middle schools, a child was sent home without the parents even actually going to school, without guarantee that the parents were home. So what I'm saying is that we have to be more diligent as a district, that we are including and communicating to parents that their kids have reached the office and that they're being isolated and that they are being accused of a certain offense. Related to that, student rights on page 27, student rights if contacted by law enforcement. In this particular case, it says it assumes, and the language clearly reads and assumes, that if the person contact is for the purpose of interviewing the student as a participant or suspect in a criminal act, the student has the following rights. The student may have those rights, but at no time do we require our staff members to communicate that right to them and their rights. They are rightless. In court of law, in the public space, our SROs in their regular daily life would be required to read the Miranda rights to an individual when questioning them for a suspected criminal act or an act against the society. We are not holding ourselves accountable to the simplest modicum of communication to the student, that this is why you're here and what you're doing, and these are your rights. The rights to be treated with respect and dignity, the right to be aware of what they're being accused of and any evidence supporting the accusation. No answer to any question or that they have the right not to answer any questions or make any statements. Again, we don't tell the kids this. Request to speak with a parent or guardian before questioning. We don't tell the kids they have that right. Request a parent or guardian to be present during questioning. We do not inform the students they have that right. Request a member of the school be present during questioning. We do not have that in writing that they have those rights and they have a right to be informed of that. When you have a scared sixth grader at one of the middle schools, they ain't gonna remember that we talked about this back in September.
Mr. Connell,
So asking that we do better.
I also have some questions and comments.
Go ahead.
Mr. Connell, I'm going to open the floor up for other board members, and after we've concluded, if you have other comments or questions, you can certainly have the floor. Dr. Yurkovich?
I'm going to start with the last one, the rights piece. And I think those in the room know I was a building administrator for 31 years of my career, actually, so that really dates me. But much of that was here in Olathe. And I want to reinforce that what we've talked about before, the code of conduct is provided to parents, to students. It's on our website. I know this practice is still in place because Dr. Yeager's talked about it, Mr. Pittman has talked about it. I also had conversation with some building administrators regarding the changes and the suggested changes. And it is still the practice to review the code of conduct with students in classrooms with an administrator, a counselor, however the model looks like at individual buildings. But those conversations take place. And you're right, when something happens, you could probably quiz that sixth grader, if you want to use that example, and they're not going to remember all of the details. But that's part of the conversation. Dr. Yeager mentioned that the focus in Olathe and related to behaviors is to teach behaviors. That's what the focus, that's where it starts. When there's some type of an inappropriate behavior, that doesn't go away. We're still teaching behaviors. So the conversation, the investigation of an incident, it's all part of that process, and I'm going to go back even before that, and that starts with building relationships with kids, which our administrators and our teachers do. And so our kids, when they get called to an administrator's office, are they nervous? You bet they are. Even when it's for a good thing. Sometimes, you know, the number of times I called a parent to tell them something positive, and you could hear this holding their breath on the other end. That's where our society is. It's the same way when we're driving and a police car comes up behind us, we immediately think, what did I do wrong? But the focus is on teaching, and it's on investigation. And I do want to address a couple of things. One is that statement related to principals having the flexibility. And I appreciate your comments, Mr. Pittman, because that first part of that statement, the principal having the authority to use discretion and common sense, was the conversation I had with some building administrators. With the shifting of some of the behaviors to a higher level, they wanted to still be able to teach kids and not have to or be required to enforce at a higher level. So I appreciate that comment. And I also appreciated your comments about who was available for building administrators to kind of bounce off a situation or have conversation with experiences that are going on district-wide, so that they know that. I want also to draw attention, Mr. Connell, you talked about no requirement to have conversation with parents, and there is within the page 4 of the edits, the bullet points there are several. One that reinforces what I just said, creating a supportive environment for students and parents through open communication, provide information about the code of conduct to each family, and be available to confer with families about education and discipline. And that, to me, is in general, but it's also when a specific incident occurs. And, you know, I'm going to repeat a comment that I made to you when we had an earlier discussion about a 30-minute time limit. It would be ideal for every situation for an administrator to be available to make that phone call. Sometimes situations, just as in law enforcement, and I'm certainly not saying that we as educators are law enforcement, but there are some similarities in that before we involve law enforcement, we do some investigation. We want to make sure that we have accurate information, that we have students in a place where we can easily access them or have further conversation, or even more than that, sometimes a student will come and report something and we want to keep them in a safe place while we investigate others. And to make certain that every 30 minutes or within 30 minutes we had a phone call would be setting our administrators up, because sometimes within 30 minutes they don't have all of the information that is needed to communicate to a parent. And so I'm sorry that it sounds like you've had some situations that weren't as positive, and that some human administrators made some mistakes, or some teachers made some mistakes. But I did just want to draw attention to those pieces. And again, one question, Mr. Pittman, and this kind of takes us back to the beginning actually, how often is the code of conduct reviewed or edited, examined? And you said this process started in April.
Correct.
And can you tell us how many administrators had input to the revisions?
Yeah, you bet. It's an annual review. This year we, and this year in particular, we had administrators. There were, let me think here. We had two at the elementary level, two principals, 2 middle school principals. We ended up with 3 high school assistant principals. So if my math's right, that's 7. Myself, 8, though I'm not an administrator. 8. Dr. McMullen participated, and Mr. Albers participated, and also did Brent Kuiper. So, and Matt Johnson, not to leave Matt out. Matt was acted as our hearing officer the second semester, also as a former administrator. Also offers a good insight because he's our athletic. So,
thank you.
Well,
good information. Good
Any other questions?
I do have a couple questions.
Coon?
So, going back to what Mr. Connell and Dr. Yurkovich brought up, the student rights if contacted by law enforcement. I understand in September, beginning of the school year, the kids go over this. I've read Miranda rights to hundreds of people. I now, as no longer being in law enforcement, if an officer was to come up to me for something, they pull me over, whatever, they think I robbed a store, I'm going to forget some of that. So are the students going to be reminded of this if they're being questioned, either by an administrator notifying them before an SRO or law enforcement comes in, or would an SRO remind them of their rights as well?
I'm going to defer to our administrator.
I wonder maybe, Mr. Albers, and specifically, Mr. Kuhn, you're referencing when police officers get involved, is that correct?
I mean, that's what it is. It says when maybe contacted by law enforcement or SRO.
I wonder if someone who has real yeah.
I mean, I understand it's not the Miranda rights, but the student probably should have it, hey, these are your rights.
Yeah, and there's a certain number of steps even to go through before law enforcement are brought in.
Right.
I mean, most times, unless it's a prohibited substance, illegal substance, things like that, where there has to be an extensive search, law enforcement SROs aren't involved at all. Once law enforcement is involved, then they would obviously have to, read any rights that they are required to. But prior to that, bringing them in, we don't read them their rights per se.
Okay.
And I think that's an important distinction, as school officials, the level of, authority that we have is obviously much less than police officers, but also for us, the level is not the same as law enforcement, as you well know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difference between probable cause, reasonable suspicion.
Right, correct.
But we do have level 2 things that include possession or exhibition of obscene literature materials, including the fact that they could be taking a picture of a page or a book in our libraries or in a classroom. If they were to distribute that same picture, a book or that is in our libraries and our classrooms, if the student was to take a picture of that and distribute that, they could be assessed. Possession or exhibition of obscene literature or material. This includes material transmitted or received via electronic means. That, under the law, because it includes obscene or pornographic, escalates to an SRO really fast. That's a level 2. So we do have a lot of things. My follow-up question would be is there any particular reason it didn't come up that we didn't have harassment 1 and harassment 2? That we didn't leave certain things here in level 2 with all the flexibility, including in-school bus suspension. I mean, there are 13 different consequences that I read, and I don't have the data to tell me what consequences have been used in which particular schools, but I do know we have new dean of students in a couple schools, so there's clearly some issues out there.
Mr. Pittman, let me take that, and then you may have a follow-up there. So I will say what you just articulated is one of the reasons why we do an annual review on the student code of conduct, because as we learn, as we see trends, as we see things happening, that's why we bring a committee together to inform what those decisions look like. In terms of the data, we are working on it. It's just not an easy data pull, so that's happening right now. But the reality is that as we have a student code of conduct, because we're dealing with students who are very different in different ways and different situations, change and arise, that's one of the reasons why we update the code of conduct every year. If you think back 6-7 years ago, vaping wasn't an issue we even had to deal with, but obviously it's an important part of what we deal with now with schools. And so I would say that's one of the reasons why we update it every year. So if we would find that the way we're proposing it tonight around harassment is not working, or if it's causing additional challenges that are unanticipated, those are things we'd bring forward again for revisions for the board next year to consider.
I know when we spoke the other day, you mentioned that your comment was the families will all know and the students will all know their rights and all their obligations, all this information upon the review during the appeals process. Again, my concern is that, don't get me wrong, I'm all for punishing kids when they're bad. I was the son of a military officer, and the worst thing you wanted was your parents to even know. In fact, that was more scary that the principal might call my parents than any licking I could get from spankings or whatever else I get at school, because that was the days in the old days. You could actually get that. Can't have that in our school district. So to a certain degree, I want to, whether you vote for this, and you're going to pass it, I know you're going to pass it, but I would like to encourage some edits as we go forward. That would include students and parents. I would encourage that we as a board put a policy group in place, with a committee that would include those persons during and throughout the year so that they could have feedback on that we could hear from minority communities and from our special ed communities. Someone mentioned in their comments around this, like 16% of their students are special needs, but 34% of our suspensions are special needs kids, right out of our own statistical information. And, right, PBS is not fully rolled out yet. It's getting there, right? All of those mechanisms to try and encourage positive behaviors and less negative is coming. But again, my concern is that we are rushing to something again. I'm not sure that we're escalating harassment when it has plenty of pretty significant punishments available to it in the level at which it was. And so and the last thing I want to kind of say is that all of the entire appeals process leaves the students and the parents, and I'm not going to be able to fix it, it's just how we are, at a great disadvantage. For them to properly represent themselves and properly represent the challenges or problems or issues they had would need to include getting legal guidance. When every part of the appeals process, from the assistant principal to the assistant superintendent to our appeals process, are all employees of the district who may or may not feel inclined to be conscious, right? One of the elements says restorative justice is a consequence area. I'd like to be able to see what that is.
I think
How are we doing that?
I think it's important to note in that process, we follow state statute. It's not something that's unique to Olathe.
That's what I said.
It's state statute that we follow with that process in terms of where appeals go and what that looks like. So that's not different for us than it would be any other school district across the state of Kansas. The other piece that I don't want to get lost in the conversation is that our administrator's default is to call parents and to work with parents. That's critical to us. Do we misstep from time to time? Sure. There is human error involved with the work we do with 5,000 employees, but our expectation as a senior leadership team, and I know your expectation as a board, is that we partner and continue to work with our parents. And I just want you to know that that's, again, something that we'll visit with our administrators about next week when we visit with them about this, because as it's been noted several times, we recognize fully that we work with minors, and parents have to be our partners in the work that we do. Guardians have to be partners in the work that we do as a school system, and that will continue to be our expectation, and that's our expectation of our community, and that's fair. There are times where we need a little bit more time to delineate when the appropriate time for that call is. Sometimes, frankly, that's because we're trying to determine if we need to make a call to DCF, something like that, which we're required to do legally as employees in a school district. So there's some variables to that, but I just wanted to not let the moment go without saying that our expectation is that parents and guardians are involved in these conversations and get the information.
And I appreciate that, and I want to acknowledge that I appreciate all the work that you all are doing, and we all know the statistical information nationwide, not just in our district, that challenges, problems, issues, disciplinaries are exploding everywhere at every age, especially coming out of COVID. And we do need to get a handle on that. And that's why my encouragement is, yes, we have to have consequences, but I really, really want to figure out, what is that slide deck? What is that presentation? Where is that accountability? That we actually make parents and the students sign a code of conduct, says I have read it, so that if a student is coming into an office and the parent says, we didn't know that, you can stick it right in front of them, because I would want you to do the same for me, but it wasn't. When I had an issue several years ago, I was not provided, there was no student code of conduct in the building, not in paper. It was in Spanish online. We as parents were not provided an opportunity to really understand what was being said, what was acquisitions, and there was no data, no evidence, or other things. So when I talk about when Dr. Yerkovich says she knows it's personal, it is personal. When a parent gets there, my first comment was, what are you doing getting in trouble? But then it's, well, where's the evidence? Well, we don't have any evidence. We deleted all the evidence. Well, where's the accusations? Where's the incident report, right? I want to make sure we're real careful and that we're following our due process, because we don't want to be on the other side of a conversation with a lawyer who's saying, you didn't follow all the processes that you could the best way.
So I do want to also say that our student code of conduct is loaded on every student device every year and has been for a number of years. I don't know when your situation took place, but that has been the case for several years within our school district. Parents also acknowledge it when they go through enrollment. Because of the work that we're still doing and the timing of the code of conduct this year, if the board would approve it tonight, it will be sent at the beginning of the year to all families and also re-uploaded, if you will, on all of our student devices so everyone has the updated student code of conduct. I just want you to know that those are things we have in place right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good example. We have board policies, and most of us don't know every single last board policy to be held accountable to as well. So I just want to error. The last thing I want to say is it does say student code of conduct, and no matter what happens, I'm going to say it at every board meeting if I have to, but before next year's adjustments, we have to include, our DEAC group says it as well, if we are not including the students in the process that affects them, has their name on it, students, we are not fulfilling our full opportunity to serve them correctly. So thank you, but I appreciate that. I yield back to the president for anybody else that has any comments on that.
Are there any other questions on 6.15? Seeing none, I seek a motion.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Wycliffe and a second by Dr. Yurkovich.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
No.
Mr. Connell,
No.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2. All right. I will seek a motion on 6.01 through 6.18, excluding 6.15.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Connell and a second by Mrs. Steele.
Did it again.
Oh,
He's Mr. Wycliffe.
Mr. Wycliffe. Sorry, dude.
That's all good.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes. All right, moving on to 7 bids, contracts, and agreements. Any questions on 7.01 through 7.07?
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Mrs. Steele and a second from Mr. Beveridge.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe.
Yes.
All right. Carry 7-0. Action other items, 8.01 through 8.04. Does anyone wish to pull anything out or any questions?
Well, I think we'll have to pull 8.02 so that we can appoint folks to Head Start Policy
Yeah.
Council and the Public School Foundation Board.
Thank
I
you.
move that we approve 8.01, 8.03, and 8.04 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Connell and a second from Mrs. Steele.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn,
Yes.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
All right, 8.02, we have to appoint someone to serve as the Head Start Policy Council Board representative. And, well, we'll start there. Anyone wish to volunteer for the Head Start Policy Board representative?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Yurkovich. I think with her experience in the public schools and her experience, it's a great way to get to know, especially our younger and our early childhood programs real well. I think her experience in middle school and this would make her so much stronger and much more full robust as a board member. And I'd support her if she would be interested in it. I don't want to put, I'm throwing it out there. You don't have to say yes, Dr. Yurkovich.
Are there any
Just like you
are there any volunteers?
So,
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wycliffe. And someone to serve on the 2023-2024 Olathe Public Schools Foundation Board. Any volunteers?
I would volunteer for that position.
Thank you, Dr. Yurkovich. All right, so our motion for 8.02 will be to appoint Mr. Wycliffe to serve as the 2023-2024 Head Start Policy Council Board Representative, and for Dr. Yurkovich to serve as the 2023-2024 Olathe Public Schools Foundation Board Representative. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Wycliffe and a second by Mr. Connell.
Mr. Connell,
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich,
Yes.
Mrs. Steele,
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe,
Yes.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge,
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 7-0. We have future action items for us to look over. We have information written reports. 11.01, any topics for discussion from board members?
I have a couple of questions on future action items that I'd ask maybe the information could be provided next month when we vote on those. One is in relation to 9.05, the renewal of online plagiarism prevention service. I'm curious, I know that is available at the high school level, and I was curious as to if it's also is or could be available at the middle level. And then my other question related to that is, were members of the teaching staff involved in the selection of that program, turnitin.com? My other questions are related to 909, the career and tech ed assessment.
9.10.
It's
I have it
10
as
on
9.09 on the screen.
here, but
Oh.
it's
Okay.
9, yeah, that's kind of way ahead. But it's the assessment for career tech ed through precision exams. And my question, a couple of them, when is it determined to use an industry-recognized credential, and when to use the precision exam to check that box, if you will? And are the results of the precision exam recognized by industry as an IRC? And then my other question related to that is, what kind of feedback do students get once they have completed the precision exam?
Sure. So if it's okay, we will get some information and send it to you all in advance, just so you have it, but we'll also be ready at the next board meeting to answer those questions as well.
Thank you.
You bet.
And could I ask, related, going back to could somebody pull the information before the next board meeting before we vote on the electronic hall pass system? It's my understanding it's installed on all the district authorized, approved, or distributed machinery for the kids. But I don't see that we have a notification to parents that it says something here, an electronic notification sent to a teacher or student via their electronic device. What I'm looking for is, is it A, ever installed on a private device owned by a student or a teacher, so their own personal phone? And B, if it is, do we have written authorization from the parents or guardians, the legal parents or the legal guardians, to install something on the children's, the students' devices? So I don't see it here, and I don't know the answer, right? And if we need to, is that part of one of those check boxes during
Sure.
registration?
Yeah, well, we can get that information too, certainly.
And Mr. Boyd, you did ask if there was any topics for discussion. I'd like to, unless somebody else wants to go first, I do have something I'd like to.
Yeah, I would like to open the floor for someone else to have some time to talk, if there's any other board members that have topics for discussions before we open the floor to Mr. Connell.
No problem.
Yeah, Mr. President, if I can, I've got a couple.
Sure.
I've got one. And gosh, I've probably talked more in this meeting than many that I have run. We had an item for Kids TLC tonight, which is great, and that is an organization that does fantastic work in our community for our kids. Could not have been prouder to have worked for them. Great partnership with this district. It's actually a model around the country. but I did want to set the record straight. There is a story with a narrative out there that I have refused to recuse myself from certain votes. I've never refused to recuse myself from a vote, and actually have done it on my own in those things
I
that
never said
pertain
that, Joe,
to
so don't look.
pertain to my employer. So I just wanted to set that record straight and have that out there in public, and so I'll yield back.
Thank you. Any other board member comments?
I have just a couple things. First, tonight we passed a school trip for a program I didn't know existed. I think, Mr. Johnson, I don't know if you're accompanying them or you were just presenting it. It's called Best Buddies, and I just want to say I'm excited. We have 4 children, one with special needs, who benefited so much from the IPS class at Olathe Northwest. And I know it's getting harder and harder for kids, for typical peers, to participate in that because their own schedules are so full and it takes up an hour in the day. So when I saw that this is a program that's going to help connect kids outside of the school day and possibly connect their parents, I'm very thankful that we are introducing that. I can tell you Meg's happiest times were when she was with her peers, and because of that program, she attended prom and homecoming and many events at school that she wouldn't have otherwise if it wasn't for the IPS class. So thank you for presenting that to us tonight for approval, and I'm excited to see what comes from it. A couple other things, let's see. Parents who are watching, if you've learned anything from tonight, review the student code of conduct with your children before the school year starts. It's very important to look that over so that you can have your own conversation at home with your kids with regard to those expectations. Let's see. I think the only other thing I have then is before we meet again in this room, there's a very important election happening in Olathe on August 1st. Because it's the first of the month, it's going to come quickly. And I just encourage you to be engaged and make sure that you understand everything there is to understand about the candidates at the city level as well as for the school district. And please vote. It's going to be a very small voter turnout, so your vote counts more in a small voter turnout election than any other. So I encourage you August 1st to get out and vote. That's all.
Any other comments? Mr. Conlon?
So, Julie, great comments. Thank you for encouraging folks to know their code of conduct on election. For the record, there was a published article. I never said that. I know for a fact that you have always recused yourself, Mr. Wycliffe. I did get an incredibly interesting stare from Joe Beveridge and Julie just now, accusatorily, and I just want to be sure that you know I never said. I absolutely know you have recused yourself in the 2 years I've been part of it, and then back when I came to board meetings in 2021. So that was a misprint on their part, for sure. So thank you for saying that. My comments, end of meeting comments. It is election season. I'm glad you brought it up. Through November, I would like all board members and their supporters to commit to a spirited process, and a process that all partners vow these things. Do not attack or involve or harass any private citizen family members of any candidates. That means leave their children and their spouses out of the chaos. Commit to no vandalism of homes, yards, vehicles, property, materials that belong to an opponent. That means no breaking, stealing, running over, or damaging campaign signs. Any good candidate can or should be able to win their election on their ideas and their effort. So engage the community. Don't intimidate members of the community you pledge to serve. And lastly, I ran for office with a concept and idea to put kids first in each and every issue, every vote, and every decision of this district. And I will never deny that that is where my focus has been. It's always about the kids. But frankly, this board hasn't done that very well. And I have to honestly say, I have not done everything either, and everything that I know how to do to make that true. So with that in mind, I want to invite anyone and everyone to join me next Thursday at the Olathe Community Center from 6:30 to 8. It's time to begin a conversation that I pledged to do a year ago, which was to actively engage the community. I will acknowledge Dr. Yeager with his meetings over the last year and the board members. That was a huge start. But I had talked to some of the board members about let's doing that together. So next Thursday, we're going to start with the very first kind. It's a fully open dialogue regarding the issues of diversity and inclusion in our district. It's been disheartening that folks have emailed and communicated over the last year or two, and when I've responded and invited them to meet or to go to lunch, they ignored me. So I'm inviting you, openly, publicly. I'm starting a series of open conversations for anyone, everywhere. We can do diversity in this district, and we can do it better, and we can do inclusion. But we have to talk with each other. We have to have conversations with each other at the same time. Now, this is an opportunity to ask questions. I'm doing it not as a board member, but as an individual citizen. I paid for the room myself. You can speak with me, ask questions, be heard. Really, talk to each other. That is the goal. We've got to do it better. This is not going to be a place or a time for yelling, fighting, politics. This is to start a conversation of diversity without division. We in the district have to lead. And as citizens, we have to choose to do something different than what's been happening the last couple of years. We can do it better for each and every child and family in this community. I'm committed. Are you? Starting next Thursday, the 20th of July, 6:30 to 8, the Olathe Community Center. If it's just me, fine. But I want every single group, whether you're a FAPE person or DEAC, black, white, old, Latino, teachers. This is the most dialogue, and I will say great thank you to Brad Boyd as new president, and to Julie, congratulations as new vice president for being open to allow us to have conversations and being open. And I'm looking forward to the next year, because I will tell you, Brad, I nominated you for president last year. I know who you are. You're a good man who cares about his kids, and you care about this school district. And I believe that. I believed it then, and I still believe it now. And I think you're going to be a really good president. So I look forward to your leadership. All right? So I'd invite you to join me if you would. And but that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. You know, Mr. Connell, I accept those comments. I would also, I'll just accept those comments tonight. So thank you. It has been my honor and a true privilege to serve this district. I get to sit here every month and make decisions that I hope impacts kids and make their lives better. And as an extension of that, help their families and make their family lives better. And I don't take lightly the position of president. I want to thank the board members who put their faith and their trust in me, that I could do it and do it well and be successful and lead this district in the way that hopefully the seven of us collectively can agree that it can go. But if not, we'll make the best decisions that we can. So as I start this tenure, there is an election in November, and I don't know how long I'll be sitting here, but I'll tell you, starting next month, I'm excited. Oh, actually, it started already, didn't it?
It did, sir.
I'm excited though to be here. I have 4 kids who are students in this district, and the notion that I would sit here and make decisions that would deliberately harm kids is something that honestly, I kind of find offensive because, you know, we don't experience this district in a vacuum. My family doesn't experience the district in a vacuum. Every decision that this board make, I personally, my wife, my kids, we all experience them. And some, you know, to the detriment of my family. We were negatively impacted by the decisions that we made as a board we were negatively impacted by the decisions that were made around transportation, the blackout dates. That hurt my family personally. So, you know, I don't sit here on a stoop and not experience stuff as a father and as a husband and have to deal with, you know, kids and how they experience the district. So I just hope everyone can understand that. And Mr. Kuhn, to your resolution, part of your resolution earlier, while that didn't pass, I still hope that same narrative is true, that we can move forward collectively, the 7 of us, and work to make this district, you know, how we can work to make this district better. So with that, Dr. Yeager, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So just 2 quick things tonight. We found out yesterday through the work of Mr. Kiger and Dr. McMullen that we were awarded a $425,000 grant around safe and secure schools from the Kansas State Board of Education, which is fantastic. You may or may not remember, but last year I think we received about $500,000 from that grant as well. So that's really, really a positive thing for us, and part of the work that they do so well in terms of, you know, finding resources to keep our kids and our staff safe and our buildings safe. So I just wanted to share that exciting news that we just found out yesterday. As you know, July 1st started our new school year at the district level, and so I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce a couple of new people and people who have played musical chairs and who are in a new seat now. So I'm going to ask each one of these people to stand up, and then if you want, you can applause for them at the end. I'm going to. If you'd like to, that's up to you. So I'm going to ask Dr. Tim Reeves to stand up. Dr. Reeves is our new Chief Academic Officer. I'm going to ask Dr. Lachelle Sigg to stand up. She's our Deputy Superintendent of Administration and Leadership. Stay standing. You guys look good standing up. John Hutchison, who is our Chief Financial Officer. So not a tremendous change in John's life. Dr. McMullen, our Deputy Superintendent of Organizational Operations. I'm going to have to work on practicing these titles so they roll off a little better. Dr. Jill Smith, who's now our Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education. Dr. Rochelle Waters, who's now our Assistant Superintendent of Middle School Education. And Dr. Elizabeth Harrison, our Executive Director of Elementary. So these are people in new spots this year, and I could not be more excited about the work that they'll do on behalf of our students and our staff and our community. So. And Clint, you're the only one in the front row that didn't stand up. So if you would like to, you're welcome to stand as well. Thank you. Those are my comments tonight.
All right, we will have executive session tonight. So for the first one, how much time are you thinking?
30 minutes, please.
Oh. All right. All right, so I'll seek a motion.
Move that the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of consultation with an attorney for the body or agency pursuant to the exception for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under COMA, and that the board return to the regular meeting at 8:15 p.m. in this room.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Beveridge and a second by Mr. Kuhn.
Mr. Kuhn?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Yes.
Mr. Boyd?
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
Hey, what's going on in Madison Place Elementary School? It's Noah Gray here. Thank you guys so much for your overwhelming support of my teammates and I as we're about to head out to Arizona to play the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's really encouraging to know that I have such amazing friends who care so much about me. This support is just such a blessing, and I'm just so grateful to be able to read these. This cookie was absolutely phenomenal. I'm still working on it. So thank you so much for making this for me, sending it my way. But seriously, I'm super excited about getting to Arizona. It's such a blessing, and hopefully we win the Super Bowl this year. Go Chiefs, and have a great rest of your day.
Linen. L-I-N-N-E-T. Linen.
Kids get golden tokens for following our 4 Bs of be safe, be kind, be helpful, and be the best you. And this is our PBIS initiative that we're doing, and really focusing on building wide expectations, but also creating a love of literacy. Does anybody in our building have 3 tokens to give out until the end of the year? We just started 2 days ago, so we've already given out 5, and so we're really excited.
So the students have the ownership in choosing the books, and we have like a great partnership with Junk Drawer that actually provides the books for us. And so the students get, you know, it's not something like you have to read this book, you have to do certain types, like since they have so much ownership in choosing it, that they love getting it and that they get to own like the book.
As soon as it was installed, it was great to see. I mean, every time we walk by, they notice the new book and they're all excited. And you know, not all of them have an opportunity to bring brand new books home. We have a wonderful library here, but this one they get to keep. And it's wonderful how excited they get for each other because they know how exciting it is to bring a brand new book home.
Hey, what's going on, Madison Place Elementary School? It's Noah Gray here. Thank you guys so much for your overwhelming support of my teammates and I as we're about to head out to Arizona to play the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's really encouraging to know that I have such amazing friends who care so much about me. This support is just such a blessing, and I'm just so grateful to be able to read these. This cookie was absolutely phenomenal. I'm still working on it. So thank you so much for making this for me, sending it my way. But seriously, I'm super excited about getting to Arizona. It's such a blessing, and hopefully we win the Super Bowl this year. Go Chiefs, and have a great rest of your day.
Linen. L-I-N-N-E-T. Linen.
That is correct.
students get golden tokens for following our 4 Bs of be safe, be kind, be helpful, and be the best you. And this is our PBIS initiative that we're doing, and really focusing on building wide expectations, but also creating a love of literacy. Anybody in our building have 3 tokens to give out until the end of the year. We just started 2 days ago, and so we've already given out 5, and so we're really excited.
So the students have the ownership in choosing the books, and we have like a great partnership with Junk Drawer that actually provides the books for us. And so the students get, it's not something like you have to read this book, you have to, there's certain types, like since they have so much ownership in choosing it, that they love getting it and that they get to own like the book.
As soon as it was installed, it was great to see. I mean, every time we walk by, they notice the new book and they're all excited. And not all of them have an opportunity to bring brand new books home. We have a wonderful library here, but this one they get to keep. And it's wonderful how excited they get for each other because they know how exciting it is to bring a brand new book home.
Hey, what's going on, Madison Place Elementary School? It's Noah Gray here. Thank you guys so much for your overwhelming support of my teammates and I as we're about to head out to Arizona to play the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's really encouraging to know that I have such amazing friends who care so much about me. This support is just such a blessing, and I'm just so grateful to be able to read these. This cookie was absolutely phenomenal. I'm still working on it. So thank you so much for making this for me, sending it my way. But seriously, I'm super excited about getting to Arizona. It's such a blessing, and hopefully we win the Super Bowl this year. Go Chiefs, and have a great rest of your day.
Linen. Linnet. Linen.
Kids get golden tokens for following our 4 Bs of be safe, be kind, be helpful, and be the best you. And this is our PBIS initiative that we're doing, and really focusing on building wide expectations, but also creating a love of literacy. Does anybody in our building have 3 tokens to give out until the end of the year? We just started 2 days ago, so we've already given out 5, and so we're really excited.
So the students have the ownership in choosing the books, and we have like a great partnership with Junk Drawer that actually provides the books for us. And so the students get, it's not something like you have to read this book, you have to, there's certain types, like since they have so much ownership in choosing it, that they love getting it and that they get their own, like the book.
As soon as it was installed, it was great to see, every time we walk by, they notice the new book and they're all excited. And not all of them have an opportunity to bring brand new books home. We have a wonderful library here, but this one they get to keep. And it's wonderful how excited they get for each other because they know how exciting it is to bring a brand new book home.
Hey, what's going on in Madison Place Elementary School? It's no great here. Thank you guys so much for your overwhelming support of my teammates and I as we're about to head out to Arizona to play the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's really encouraging to know that I have such amazing friends who care so much about me. This support is just such a blessing, and I'm just so grateful to be able to read these. This cookie was absolutely phenomenal. I'm still working on it. So thank you so much for making this for me, sending it my way. But seriously, I'm super excited about getting to Arizona. Such a blessing, and hopefully we win the Super Bowl this year. Go Chiefs, and have a great rest of your day.
Linen. L-I-N-N-E-T. Linen.
For the purpose of discussing matters relating to a person pursuant to the exception relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under coma, except that any such person shall have the right to a public hearing if requested by that person, and that the board return to a regular meeting at 8:45. He said 20.
He said 15, but I think that's fine. It's
Can't come back early.
okay.
8:45.
8:45?
Second.
Thank you. Everybody vote yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Kids get golden tokens for following our 4 Bs of be safe, be kind, be helpful, and be the best you. And this is our PBIS initiative that we're doing, and really focusing on building wide expectations, but also creating a love of literacy. Does anybody in our building have 3 tokens to give out until the end of the year? We just started 2 days ago, and so we've already given out 5, and so we're really excited.
So the students have the ownership in choosing the books, and we have like a great partnership with Junk Drawer that actually provides the books for us. And so the students get, it's not something like you have to read this book, you have to, there's certain types, like since they have so much ownership in choosing it, that they love getting it and that they get to own like the book.
As soon as it was installed, it was great to see, I mean, every time we walk by, they notice the new book and they're all excited. And you know, not all of them have an opportunity to bring brand new books home. We have a wonderful library here, but this one they get to keep. And it's wonderful how excited they get for each other because they know how exciting it is to bring a brand new book home.
Hey, what's going on, Madison Place Elementary School? It's Noah Gray here. Thank you guys so much for your overwhelming support of my teammates and I as we're about to head out to Arizona to play the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. It's really encouraging to know that I have such amazing friends who care so much about me. This support is just such a blessing, and I'm just so grateful to be able to read these. This cookie was absolutely phenomenal. I'm still working on it. So thank you so much for making this for me, sending it my way. But seriously, I'm super excited about getting to Arizona. It's such a blessing, and hopefully we win the Super Bowl this year. Go Chiefs, and have a great rest of your day.
Linen. L-I-N-N-E-T. Linen.
Kids get golden tokens for following our 4 Bs of be safe, be kind, be helpful, and be the best you. And this is our PBIS initiative that we're doing, and really focusing on building wide expectations, but also creating a love of literacy. Does anybody in our building have 3 tokens to give out until the end of the year? We just started 2 days ago, and so we've already given out 5, and so we're really excited.
So the students have the ownership in choosing the books, and we have like a great partnership with Junk Drawer that actually provides the books for us. And so the students get, it's not something like you have to read this book, you have to do certain types, like since they have so much ownership in choosing it, that they love getting it and that they get to own like the book.
As soon as it was installed, it was great to see, every time we walk by, they notice the new book and they're all excited. And not all of them have an opportunity to bring brand new books home. We have a wonderful library here, but this one they get to keep. And it's wonderful how excited they get for each other because they know how exciting it is to bring a brand new book home.
I move to adopt the recommendation of Dr. Jim McMullen, hearing officer, to affirm the decision of the district's suspension and expulsion committee concerning the expulsion of a student E23-4.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Steele and a second by Mr. Wycliffe.
Mr. Boyd?
Yes.
Mr. Beveridge?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn?
Yes.
Mr. Connell?
Yes.
Dr. Yurkovich?
Yes.
Mrs. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Wycliffe?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned.